Dear friends, in this final module of this workshop, we will give you an overview as to how you go about writing a scientific paper. You have done your study, you have your results and conclusions, perhaps you have even given a podium presentation at a conference, but the final test of your scientific work being recognized by a wider set of surgeons across the world will be when you get this article published. It is a little tall ask, but it can be achieved by all of us. But the basic requirement is that you must want to write. It's a lot of work, a lot of hard work as well at times. But I find that the biggest problem is that our colleagues and our students actually do not have the motivation to write. Nobody can motivate you to do it. It has to come from within you. Once you have that urge to write, you must read papers. It will tell you what published papers look like. What is the trend? How are they writing, and what is it that is acceptable to the editors? Just textbook reading, as most of our postgraduates do, is simply not enough. There are many types of publications in a journal. The meat of the journal, the basic, the important type of an article is an original article. You will have reviews, editorials, and case reports, and many more. But this module deals with writing original articles. Let's look at what happens when you submit a paper, because based on that, we can then start working on what we can write and how we can write to maximize the chances of an article being accepted by a journal. When you send the journal article to the journal office, most of it is done online nowadays. The office sends it to the chief editor, and he may choose, depending on what you have written, to reject it at that stage itself. But this happens rarely. Most chief editors do not reject it at that stage, but they would rather send it to an associate or a sub-editor. His responsibility is to see the article, choose appropriate reviewers, and share it with 4 or 5 reviewers who will read the article, give their comments, and send it back to the associate editor. And the associate editor, based on these comments, makes a final decision about the article and sends that decision to the authors through the journal office. The decision can be one of 3 decisions. It may be rejection, where the authors it's communicated to the authors that it is rejected, or it can be an outright acceptance in its form, where the authors get a letter of acceptance. But what happens most often is that the associate editor writes to the authors requesting modifications. He will collate and summarize all the critiques or the defects that have been pointed out by the reviewers, and asks the authors to modify it accordingly and resubmit the paper. The resubmitted paper goes through the same process again, and if the reviewers are happy with the changes that are made, then the paper will be accepted. For you to get your article accepted, you will have to have a good research question, good protocol, a good type of study. Randomized control trial is always looked at in a better light than case reports or retrospective studies. It must have good statistics and good discussion with conclusions which are supported by the data in the results section. The paper that you write must conform to the standard, what I call the anatomy or the structure of the paper. It will have a title, author details, abstracts, and most importantly, the introduction, materials and methods, results and discussion section called the IMRAD. It will also have conclusions, acknowledgements and references. As we go along, eventually we will be talking a little bit about each of these parts of a paper. I would also strongly urge that you go to this site called the icmje.org. It is the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. It has several recommendations that will give you very clear ideas as to how you should go about structuring your paper. I have put the important references in this slide. This presentation is available to all of you. So please try and visit each of these sites that I have recommended. Particularly important is this British Journal of Surgery, 2010. It may be 19 years old, but for the whole year, there were 12 excellent articles about writing papers, various aspects of writing a paper. And what they have written then is equally applicable now. And I remember reading it at that stage and learning a lot about writing papers. So I would strongly recommend that you read at least parts of this and learn about writing a paper. Now let's look at all the components of an article. The title must be short and crisp, best given as a phrase rather than a full sentence. Avoid questions, and to get an idea, you check out other titles in the journal, and then you will know what kind of titles attracts the editor's attention. It's said that you must keep important words in the beginning and the end. I don't know how far this is practically feasible, but it is one of the recommendations. The authorship is something that we have to focus on. Earlier I used to see 10 names in a paper. Everybody in the department had his name on the paper. It's very clear that the person doing the maximum amount of work, what I call donkey's work, data collection, writing up the master sheet, filling up all the data, this is usually the PG who is doing it. He must be the first author. Many times I see the mentor giving his name as the first author. That's not the normal practice at all. And every person who figures on the author list must have a specific work or specific input in terms of designing the study, doing background work, supervising the data collection, or supervising the writing. And above all, they must give in writing to the journal that they take full responsibility and accountability as far as the contents of the work is concerned. The abstract comes at the top of the article, but it is usually written at the end of all the other sections. It should be about 200 to 300 words long. It contains everything that the article contains other than the discussion. And please understand that many times the decision to take the review process further depends on what the editor thinks after reading the abstract. So your abstract must clearly give an impression as to why the study was done, what are its aims, very succinct but clear explanation of the materials and methods, results in a nutshell, and conclusions. Based on this, you will get the process going if the editor is impressed. Introduction is fairly simple. It shouldn't be too long. You will first convey what is being studied. You will have some background information as to what is lacking in that field and how you are trying to fill that hiatus. And the last part of it is, what are you doing about it? How are you going about doing that, and that is the aims of the study. Material methods will give in detail how you're going to go about meeting the aims of the study. You have to specify the type of the study. Is it prospective, retrospective? Is it a case control study? Is it a randomized control study? What is the population being studied? What are its characteristics? You must prove that you have adequate numbers in the study, which is statistically validated, define the inclusion and exclusion criteria, detailed methods used. It's important because if somebody else wants to repeat your study, he or she should be able to get all the methods and all the equipment by just looking at your article. And you must specify that the required permissions from the patient, from the hospital administration, and from the ethical committee have been obtained. There's a checklist that you can have, and this so-called strobe statement and checklist, I would recommend that you look at it. This is freely available on the net. Results must be expressed fully and honestly as specified in the materials and methods. Tables usually give you information about evidence, figures give you highlights, and the text in the results section puts in flowing words the important findings of your study. You must focus on the primary outcome, give confidence intervals as main results for the main results. It's another way of expressing the so-called p-value. Then you have to report essential summary of the statistics. And you can't make the results section too long by including too many tables. In fact, many journals put a moratorium, give you a rule as to how many tables and figures you can use in an article. The discussion section should not repeat what is said in the introduction. You must make a statement about the principal findings. What did you find? What are its strengths and weaknesses of the study? You can also compare it with other papers and say whether your findings agree with or disagree with findings from other similar studies. You can give an explanation as to why that may be so, and make a few statements about what are the implications for clinicians or policymakers. So that's in fact why you do any study at all. And if there are some unanswered questions or ambiguities, you can mention those and give a lead to what can be done in future to improve on your present study. And this is an important part of your paper. Conclusions, 3 to 4 lines, explains the final outcome. In the acknowledgement, you thank all the people who helped you. In fact, many names that would have earlier figured in the authorship column will now be shifted to the acknowledgement column because perhaps you have used their patients, your consultants' patients, perhaps you have used their good offices to get the project approved or whatever, but they were not directly involved with the study, so they cannot be authors, but you must thank them for their help in your conduct of the study. References are a very important but often neglected part of a paper. You have to acknowledge others' work, their words and their ideas even. It is a legal requirement, and if somebody alleges that you have copied their work, if you have given a good reference to that work, then you will be exonerated. It also reflects your reading effort. The more you do the background reading, the better it is for you to design the study. You can also tell the world that you have done that much of work before you design the study. And it shortens the paper. If everything that is done by others has to be written in your paper, then you will have a very long paper. And as I said, many journals will put a moratorium or put a limit on the number of words you can use. Usually it is 2,500 to 3,000 words. And so rather than repeating what you have quoted, you can just say in one sentence what the conclusion was, and then give a reference so that if people are interested, they can go to that paper and read up more about it. There are two methods of referencing, the Vancouver and the Harvard method. Most of the time it is the Vancouver method for journal articles and the Harvard method for textbooks. I won't go into it at this stage. Citation managers are computer programs which help you collect, stratify or arrange and give complete versions of referencing. It's easier to use managers rather than type everything down with your own hands during the writing of the reference section. There are many free managers available. I use Zotero. I have used Mendeley before. I won't go into the details, but you can look it up and see how you can use it. It usually helps you to organize your references. It collects what are called metadata from all the websites and makes life easy for you. It can interface with many word processors and give you the correct version of the citation. And if different journals ask for different kinds of referencing, then you have actually add-ons for these citation managers which automatically satisfies the requirements put up by the journals. It's very important to make sure that whatever you write is not a copy. Copy-paste culture must go. You can read whatever you want, you can quote whatever you want, but you must paraphrase it. The material that you have understood by somebody else's writing must be written in your own words. And it is very important that if you are using a quotation for effect, that you put it in inverted commas and attribute that statement to the person who made it, so that you make it very clear that you're not copying it but acknowledging the source. It can be plagiarism of the text. Mosaic plagiarism is a complex mechanism where there's a combination of your own mild modifications of somebody else's statement, but it's easily picked up by these so-called plagiarism checkers. You can have a plagiarism of ideas. It may not be the text that you're copying, but the ideas may be copied, and even that is not allowed. And if you quote yourself from a previous article of yours without acknowledging yourself, that is called self-plagiarism. Even that is frowned upon in publication service. It can be unintentional when you don't know much about referencing. There aren't too many marks given for this, even if it's unintentional. But the intentional one is very, very strongly condemned in publication circles. So, and please be clearly sure yourself that any kind of plagiarism is considered a very bad theft in publishing circles. There are plagiarism checkers on the net. Nowadays it is very easy to know if you have lifted passages and sentences from other works. If you use a particular part of your article and put it on the plagiarism checker, if more than 30% is not your own, is not original but has come from some other source, then you are in for trouble. So please be very careful, and I really feel that these must be used on the theses that our postgraduates submit to universities, because I gather there's a large-scale copy-paste phenomenon going on in that field. Which journal should you send it to? We have said this before, always go for an indexed journal with a good impact factor. I'll tell you a little bit about predatory journals in the next slide, but avoid predatory journals. You have to see what is the kind of subject matter you have and what is the kind of specialty journal you're sending it to. If it's a general surgery subject, perhaps Indian Journal of Surgery, it's our flagship. If you're writing something on laparoscopic surgery, you can send it to Journal of Minimal Access Surgery. If the subject matter is something which is global, you can send it to any international journal. If it is something very clearly associated with Indian surgical practice, it will have to be an Indian journal. You can also look at how long it takes for an average journal to be accepted. Sometimes it runs into months. And so if you want to, you can look at it and choose the journal which may have a shorter turnaround time. Predatory journals are very many. There are hundreds of those, and unfortunately, India seems to uh, lead the seems to be the leader in the world as far as predatory journals go. It's very sad indeed. They accept money for publication. There is no peer review. There is no quality control. And so what you have to do is look at the DOAJ, which is the Directory of Open Access Journals, which are non-predatory, which are not predatory. And so if the journal that you want to publish in figures on the DOAJ list, then you're on safe ground. DOAJ.org will give you that list, and it is fairly easy to search for journals and publishers on this, what is accepted as the legitimate open access journal list. It's also important that different journals have different requirements for the format of the articles. There are very small differences, but nevertheless there are significant differences. And so you got to read specifically the instructions to authors from the journal website before you actually send your material in. If there are small changes to be made, it's much better to make it well before you submit it, because one of the grounds for rejection is that your submitted article does not conform to the requirements of the journal. Rejections are very common. Having published several papers, even now some of my papers get rejected. It's a way of life for authors. It should not dishearten you. Read the rejection letter carefully. Give attention to all the criticisms that are made. Change your article accordingly and send it to some other journal. And it's very, very likely that it will be seen in a better light in the different journal. Now, if it is not rejected and certain comments are made for you to change the manuscript, do that. If you feel that the comments are unreasonable, you are within your rights to disagree courteously and write to them as to why you cannot make that particular change. Well, it's quite possible that the reviewer may change his mind. And as I keep saying, you cannot apply to 2 or 3 journals at the same time. The same article, an article must be sent to one journal, and you can send it to another journal only after the first journal has rejected it. We have come to the end of the module as well as the end of the workshop. There will be a summary module after this, but I do hope that this workshop has enthused you enough to look good, to get into the data collection, data analysis and paper writing mode. And I can assure you that it will make you a better surgeon. Thank you very much.